Alrighty, so match week number 15 is upon us, and once again, we have a full slate of action where there's going to be 14 games, though there's going to be 12 of them that's going to be happening on Saturday, and there's actually going to be two Sunday games that is going to happen, which I think that is probably the most that we have had in terms of Sunday games, because usually in terms of Sunday games, we usually only see one of them, but we get a bonus one with two of them happening. But we first talk about the Saturday night action, and in terms of the Saturday night action, usually we know that the 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific is kind of the meat of the action. That kind of isn't the case this week. In fact, it's kind of a little bit more balanced in terms of this week, where there's actually going to be only 5 games that's going to start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, which is probably the fewest we had so far. And the first one is Montreal versus Inter Miami. Now, both of these teams have identical record at 5-0-8, and they've been kind of having an identical form in these last couple of games too, where it seems like they got themselves back on track, only for them to kind of regress a little bit in the last couple of games. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, Montreal leads at 4-1-2, and the key points coming into this one is that can Montreal continue their strong home form? So one of the things that the reason why Montreal has really got themselves back into playoff contention after it looked like all hopes was lost after a disastrous start to the season is because of their strong home form. They've only lost once this season at home, and they're looking to trying to continue that against a Miami team that have not done well this season on the road. And it feels like, with Inter Miami, I mentioned this team tends to be always a very streaky team in MLS. They when things are going well with Phil Neville's team, things are definitely will go well with them going on a winning streak. But when things are bad with Phil Neville's team, then yeah, it can get really bad to a point where the supporters are getting very frustrated about it, and especially after that embarrassing loss against Orlando City. Some of the support groups are calling for Phil Neville's heads to a point where we're back into the discussion of is Phil Neville now once again on the hot seat because of the recent bad form that Miami is in. But other other than that, it's going to be interesting to see how this game, of course, will turn out with both of these teams, of course, regressing in the last couple of games, and they're looking to trying to get back on track to see who's going to do so in this one. Moving on, we got New England versus the Chicago Fire. So the Revs, in the last game, yeah, it was not a great game for them in the last one, and now they have dropped themselves into third place in the Eastern Conference with a 7-3-3 record. They're facing against a Fire team that is 3-6-4. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, the Fire does still slightly leads the all-time meeting with a 34-19-32 record. Again, these are two teams. Well, I wouldn't say these are two teams that are original members of MLS because the Fire, of course, came into the league in 1998, but there's been a lot of meeting between both of these teams. Now, the key points coming into this one, the Revs obviously they have started to suffer a little bit in terms of resort, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're losing key players on the attacking team front because of injuries. Guys like Gustavo Bo is still injured. Carlos Gil, of course, looks like he's not going to be available in this one. And then obviously terrible news that we saw in the game against Cincinnati where they lost Dylan Barrero for the season because of a torn ACL. So yeah, the Revs are definitely trying to stay afloat with dealing with a lot of injuries on the attacking front. Whereas for the Chicago Fire, fitness is going to be an interesting thing that's going to happen. And I'm going to say this a lot with a lot of these teams that have played U.S. Open Cup in the middle of the week, where a lot of these teams have played a lot of games in the last couple of weeks. So we'll see whether or not the fitness level is going to be done. And especially, after that big win against Austin FC, will they carry that momentum, or is there going to be a bit of a letdown coming into this one? Because it is pretty clear that we're still seeing that coaching bump that they have with their new head coach Frank Kopas, and we'll see whether if that's continue against a Revs team that again, they're dealing with some injuries issue, but they're trying to ride it out, and especially with the way that so far Bruce Arena team has always tend to do well against teams that they should beat. You would expect them to maybe get a win in this one, even if they're facing against a Fire team that Frank Copas has started kind of. I mean, he's not completely turned this team fortune around, but kind of slowly has done so in these last couple of games. Moving on, we got NYCFC versus the Philadelphia Union. So the good news for NYCFC is that they're finally back home. It's been a lengthy road trip that they've been on. They've been on the road in the last 4 games, 5 if you include all. all competition. But the bad news is they get to play against the Philadelphia Union, and I have a feeling the Union are still very pissed off after what happened in the CONCACAF Champions League, and they've been pretty pissed off to a point where they have looked like a team to beat once again. From what I said earlier this season, that looked like they're on the verge of potentially going back to MLS Cup with the way that they've been playing. Now, in terms of the record, 6-4-3 that the Union has, and for NYCFC 4-5-4 all-time meeting, NYCFC still leads the all-time meeting with a 10-2-8 record. As I mentioned, for NYCFC, they're finally back home, albeit this is going to be at City Field. Though I would say that it's kind of their home too, because we know that in the near future they're going to be building that brand new stadium right next to City Field. So technically they're basically back at home, which is something that they've been very good this season at home. I mean, this is a team that is one of those teams this season that is a night and day kind of team when they're playing at home and on the road. On the road, they look like a team that look completely lost, but when they're playing at home, they look like a team that is unbeatable, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that with the small dimension and playing at a baseball field has really kind of taken off some teams that they can't really adjust to the way that NYCFC have been playing. But like I said, they're happy that they're back at home after a very long road trip. But again, the bad news is they play against a Union team that, again, the Union, they have not lost a game ever since they lost to LAFC in the CCL semifinal. And I think this is clearly just a sense from Jim Kern that, the team's kind of playing with a chip on their shoulder, that, they miss a big opportunity to win themselves a trophy, and especially once again falling in the hands of the same team that they lost last season in the final. That this Union team is playing with a lot of anger and a lot of motivation, that they want to get themselves back to where they were last season, which is MLS Cup, and they're definitely playing like that, and we'll see whether or not if that's going to continue, because like I said, so far this season, going on the road to play against NYCFC, it's have not been easy for opposition to get points, and it never has. I mean, that plays, whether NYCFC play at Yankee Stadium or City Field, uh, those are two of the toughest places to get points. I mean, the only hope that opposition have when they play NYCFC on the road is they better hope that the game is at Red Bull Arena, because if it is at Red Bull Arena, then they definitely have a shot, because we know NYCFC has had a lot of issue whenever they play at Red Bull Arena as their home games. But moving on, we got Orlando City versus Atlanta United. So while Heineken Rivalry Week was over last week, it definitely didn't feel like it with the way that we do get a couple of rivalry game, and this is definitely one of them between Orlando versus Atlanta United, also known as the original Southeastern Southern Derby, with both of these team being the first two Southeastern team coming into the league. Now Orlando 5-4-4, while Atlanta United 6-4-4. And in terms of the all-time meeting, Atlanta does leads the all-time meeting with a 9-6-3 over Orlando City. Now the good news for Orlando is the fact that they don't have to face Joseph Martinez in this. They don't have to face what Joseph Martinez have always said. They're the fodder of him. But the bad news is the fact that they did get a win in the last game. So if you're an Orlando City fan, you know the drill. If you get a win, most likely it's probably going to be a loss in the last game. Again, I also kind of wrote that are Orlando due for a loss after against or actually I don't know what I wrote there, due for a loss against the Struggle. That actually didn't make sense. Let's just put due for a loss. Yeah, like that. Yeah, I don't know what the heck I was writing there on the board, but yeah, Orlando due for a loss, because according to the inconsistent form for Orlando City, every time they get a win, it's probably going to be a loss in the next game, and it's a possibility that it could be the case, because they're facing against Atlanta team that it is pretty clear that the return of Yakimakis has really helped this team, especially on the attacking end. They look much threatening on the attacking end, and have started to look like the Atlanta United from early this season. As long as that continue, they definitely have a shot against an Orlando City team that, again, anytime when Atlanta goes on the road to play against Orlando City, they have had some success, and not to mention Orlando has had problems this season at Exploria Stadium. I think they've only won 2 home games so far at Exploria Stadium. Yeah, home form has been a problem, but so is inconsistency. And again, I know Orlando City fans know the drill, that after the big win that they had in the last game, they know they're probably gonna lose, because this team just cannot be able to consistently put it in back to back back resort. Or unless maybe things might change. Maybe this might be the time where they finally get out of that inconsistent form that they had this season, but it's going to be hard to do so when they face against a team that, even though they know that they hate and they want to win, especially against Atlanta United, it's always been the team that Orlando has had problems, both at home and also on the road. But now moving on in terms of the next match. Speaking of a team that has a lot of problem, that of course is Toronto FC. So yeah, I mean it's safe to say that when you look at a lot of bad teams this season and that there's been a lot of turmoil and it's always fascinating to watch these teams that have been horrendous season and the turmoil that is going on behind the scenes. And I have a feeling I'll probably have to make a video about TFC and their turmoil that's going on behind the scenes. But just to put it shortly, yeah, it's a turmoil between Bob Bradley and some of his star player with Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi to a point where Bradley have actually now decided to bench Bernardeschi because of some of the action, and obviously Insigne, he's been suffering a bit of an injury, though again, I don't know if that of course maybe is true or not, because with the way that it seems like there's also tension between both of them. We've seen it before where teams decide to say, well, a player has suffered an injury, but in reality that of course is not the case. We're just faking this out just to make it sound like credible, when in reality there's definitely a fracture relationship between the players and the head coach. And this again goes back to what I also said of the fact that Bob Bradley is sitting on a very hot seat. And right now, I think between him and Greg Vanny probably are likely odds to be the next head coach to be fired this season. But they do play against DC United. It doesn't help the fact that they desperately need a result, and they play against a DC team that have been really good in the past couple of games. 5-4-5 is the record, while TFC 2-7-5 and sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. All-time meetings 17, 11, and 12 in favor of DC. And again, the key points coming into this for Toronto is the fact that yeah, they're pretty much in the this is fine meme kind of sums up this team. So you know that the this is fine meme with the dog sitting in the chair while fire kind of engulf around him. Yeah, that's what TFC is basically going for right now, and it's hard that when you have that many distraction that is going on off the field and there's clashes between head coaches and their star player, that yeah, it's hard for them to try to pull things out. Whereas for DC again, they're looking to try to twist the knife a little bit. Can they continue the strong start they have, where they've only lost once in the last seven games, and that Wayne Rooney has cut this team from being a very inconsistent team in the beginning of the season to a team that have performed regularly and able to get results. So we'll see whether that is going to be the case. And if DC does win against TFC, you just wonder, is this could be the time where we see Bob Bradley can potentially get fired, and also maybe even higher up too, because this doesn't just extend in terms of so the problem Bob Bradley has with his star player. You look at higher up in the front office. This has been a huge issue with them too, with that front office making bad decision time and time again, to a point where they have just kind of self-destruct in these last couple of games, gone from a team that, remember, they were a regular world beater in MLS. Yeah, they have pretty much destroyed that in a span of such a short time, and that it's been a huge fall from grace from this TFC team. But moving on, we got Houston versus Austin FC. So we get another Copa Tias, as this is going to be the third week in a row that we have a Copa Tias. See, Heineken Rivalry from last week, it wasn't actually over. It seems like it kind of continued into this week too, with both of these teams playing against each other. And this, of course, the first of three games that's going to be starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Houston 4-5-3, while Austin 4-5-4. In terms of the all-time meeting, Austin does leads the all-time meeting with a 4-0-2 record over the Dynamo. But for the Dynamo, this season they have been very good at home, and it was shown in the last game where they were able to win 4-0 against Minnesota. And we'll see whether they can continue in this game, especially in that game against the Loons. I thought that was probably the best game that they play this season, and we'll see whether they can ride that momentum heading into this Copa Tias. And for Austin, I mean, they did finally got a much needed win in last week, but obviously in the middle of the week, it seems like they're back to being a team that just, there's been a lot of problem with this Austin team. And now problem gets even worse with the way that I've talked about the defense. This season it's been kind of on a life support with them with the amount of key players going down with injuries. Well, add Leo Vasanen as the latest player to go down with a knee injury, and that's now both of their center back that is going to be missing action. And honestly, yeah, I think it's back to full on panic mode. I mean, it's getting to a point where I feel like for Austin they have no choice, but they might have to put Kip Keller back into this. And I know that's probably something that Austin fans does not want to see, but I wish that they at least give him a chance. I mean, I know Kip Keller had a disastrous kind of moment on opening week, but I want to see a good redemption story, and we'll see whether, of course, is if that is gonna be the case. Now, obviously, I don't expect them to really go really badly, and that, of course, is decided to go even crazier and bring on Amr Tarek there, because we know after what happened in that CCL game against Violeta, Amr Tarek pretty much is not going to be starting anytime soon for this Austin FC side. But yeah, I think it's getting to a point where they're just so short of center backs that they're getting to a point where they're running out of option that they have to put in players that they really don't want to play. Again, Kip Keller's name to throw in there, but they have to do it because of this. And we'll see whether or not if Houston can capitalize. Again, this Dynamo team, they've been very good this season at home, and we'll see whether they can do so in this game too. Now, moving on in the next one. So we got Minnesota versus RSL. So the Loons, obviously, in the last game, that was probably the worst game that they played this season. And I actually didn't do the review of the game between the Loons and the Dynamo in the U.S. Open Cup because I don't do reviews for the U.S. Open Cup, and I actually decided to switch off that game after they were down 3-0 because yeah, it was a pretty disastrous class, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it was a combination of them not putting the strongest starting 11 at the back, and also Ariaga basically got himself sent off after 33 minutes, and that defense just completely crumbled after that. Now, they're looking to try to bounce back in this one against RSL, who has a 4-6-3 record. And in terms of the all-time meeting, 5-5-3 over RSL, as Minnesota has done well against RSL. They only lost 3 times against RSL, and I think they only lost once when they play against RSL at Allianz Field. But again, for Minnesota, I'm really hoping that midweek game was just a blip in terms of what has been a really solid Loons back line. And again, I think it might be because they weren't playing their regular starters, and when you of course lost when you're a key defensive midfielder after just 33 minutes because of a red card. Yeah, it was not a big surprise that they just kind of capitulate as the game goes along. Whereas for RSL, I mentioned that a couple weeks maybe this would be an easy win for the Loons, but then I just realized RSL started to get themselves back on track with the way that they've been able to beat their Rocky Mountain Cup rival Colorado twice in a span of just a couple of days. There could be a chance that RSL might started to get themselves back into good form, and we'll see whether if that is going to be the case coming into this game. Though again, it's not going to be easy because I think coming into this one, I talked about earlier before with teams playing in the U.S. Open Cup. Both of these teams, of course, play in the U.S. Open Cup, and that fitness level was going to be really tested with this team, and especially this team. I don't think they're gonna have Reynoso back this week because he's still trying to get himself full fitness. Like I think at the very earliest, Reynoso might not be back with this team at the earliest as we head into early June. But I think we might be getting to a point where they're hoping that eventually he is going to be back because losing Robin Van Lud at least for majority of the season after it was found out that he's going to be out for 4 to 6 months. Yeah, that's a huge blow to this Loons attack. But now moving on, we got St. Louis versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So St. Louis, of course, fresh off of an impressive 4-0 win against Sporting KC, looking to try to carry into this one against a Whitecaps team that has a 4-4-5 record, while St. Louis 7-4-1. This, of course, is the first ever meeting, as it is the case whenever St. Louis face against either a Western Conference and the Eastern Conference team this early into the season. But for St. Louis, again, they could actually be making some more history too of becoming the first expansion team to reach 25 points after just 13 games in the season. In fact, they mentioned before that there was only like three other teams that have been able to reach 25 points just 15 games into their MLS season. It's just been a magical season for St. Louis so far in their expansion year, and they're looking to continue that against a Whitecaps team that, they definitely have some momentum too, after getting that big win against Seattle at home and then getting a win in the middle of the week in the Canadian Championship against Pacific to move on into the final once again. Vanny Sartini team started to gather some momentum again, and this will really kind of test this St. Louis team. That what's kind of be interest about this St. Louis side is the fact that they're gonna have more of the ball in this one. We know that the Whitecaps is a team that likes to hit on the transitions. So yeah, this is gonna be interesting to see how it is. And I wonder, does this not favor St. Louis with the way that the Whitecaps love to play on the transition, love to go quickly on the attack, which that when you play against a team that likes to press, that's kind of the way to try to solve a pressing team. So yeah, I wonder whether this might not be a good matchup for this St. Louis side. But then again, I think in the last game it was kind of proven to the St. Louis side that Bradley Carnell does seems to have a plan B in terms of, well, if teams decide to just kind of sit back against them, they're just not going to press whatsoever. They're just um well, actually, if they decide to sit back again, so they're gonna have to try to break teams down, and it seems like they were able to relatively did a successful job against Sporting KC in the last game. Albeit, obviously, Sporting KC in the last game just kind of went back to where they were in the first 10 game of the season, which was just an absolute tire fire. That's not going to be the same with this Whitecaps team that has been playing very well in these last couple of games. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last six games to finish off the review for match week number 15. Or actually, not the review, I'm sorry, but the preview for all of these games of match week number 15. So moving on, we got the Colorado Rapids versus FC Cincinnati. So it's been a rough week for the Colorado Rapids, losing to their Rocky Mountain rival twice in the U.S. Open Cup and in MLS, and it could get even tougher because they're facing against an FC Cincinnati team that's fresh off of that Hell is Real Derby win and also winning in the U.S. Open Cup. Now, the big thing about FC Cincinnati coming into this one is the fact that it is a short week and they are played in altitude, and not to mention that short week that they had, they play 120 minutes. They went the distance against the Red Bulls. So again, I would say that Cincinnati, there's a case that fitness could be an issue coming into this game against a Rapids team. But that being said, in terms of the all-time meeting, 2-0-0 in favor of the Rapids, as Cincinnati has never beaten Colorado, though Colorado is 2-6-6, while Cincinnati is 9-1-3, and the Rapids are still the only team to have yet to get a win this season. I mean, it's hard to believe that of course is the case, but both of their wins this season has come on the road, and for Cincinnati again, their road form has not been great this season. It hasn't been as good as last season, only winning 1 out of 5. Though I will give a caveat: the fact that they've only lost once on the road this season out of those 5 games that they played. They draw 3 times so far on the road. Anytime when you get a draw on the road, it's not considered to be a bad kind of thing. But again, for Cincinnati, the big question is fitness level. How is that going to be coming into this one? And I know they didn't start most of their starters in that game against the Red Bulls, but still, on a short week, playing in altitude, it's not going to be easy, and especially against a Rapids team that Robin Fraser, he definitely wants to get this team back on track and trying to get this Rapids team finally their first win of the season. I mean, those home fans, they've been waiting for a long time for them to finally get their first home wins, and we'll see whether that is going to be the case. I mean, if that is going to be the case, I mean, do you say it's considered an upset? Because again, Colorado has been playing some gritty soccer. Well, at least not this week, but recently under Robin Fraser, and we'll see whether that grittiness will be enough to be able to beat against a team as good as FC Cincinnati so far this year. Moving on, we got the LA Galaxy versus Charlotte FC. So this is the first of 3 games that's going to start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. The Galaxy 2-3-8, while Charlotte is 5-3-6. And in terms of the all-time meeting, there's only one prior meeting, but it's definitely a meeting that Charlotte fans would not forget for a long time, because this is the first team that they play at least at home that is. But unfortunately, they lost that one at home in front of 70,000 strong. Well, actually, not just 70,000 strong. It was like 75,000 strong at Bank of America Stadium. Now, the key points coming into this one for the Galaxy is it's going to be another game where this could be a beginning of a spark after they got a big win against LAFC and El Trafico. Albeit, I know in that Trafico, it was more like LA Galaxy versus LAFC too, but Galaxy wouldn't care. Like whenever you get to beat your intercity rival, especially get some revenge after losing them at home, oh, they'll definitely take it. And especially they haven't done well against LAFC when they played at LAFC home stadium. They will think that maybe that win will be enough for them to be kind of a turning point for their season, just like when they got that big home win against the Quakes in the Cali Clasico. Now for Charlotte, they're definitely dealing with some attacking injury bugs. No Capetti in this game, no Josviak in this game, so the creative department is going to be interesting. But then this is where Jestamira will step up because Jestamira has been just immense ever since he has arrived with Charlotte. I mean, who would have thought that of course, would be the case, but he has really stepped up to a point where I have a feeling he could have a big game again in this one because I think for the Galaxy, I mean, yes, they got that big win against against LAFC, but maybe that's just kind of a bit of a small screen of the fact that this team is still not as good as what we thought that what we think that they are, and that maybe they could go through for snap back to reality against a Charlotte team that again the Charlotte team under Christian Latanzio, I know they definitely want to bounce back after that tough result that they had at home in the hands of Nashville SC. But moving on, we got the San Jose Earthquakes versus FC Dallas. Now, this is actually a game that I'm going to attend. As the Quakes, of course, 5-3-5, while FC Dallas is 6-4-3. I think this is the second game that, or actually, no, this is not the second game. This is the third home game that the Quakes, of course, has had. And so far, the Quakes this season, they have pretty much been almost untouchable at home this season. All five of their wins has come at home this season. In fact, they have won five out of their last six games. And in terms of the all-time meeting, the Quakes still have a 29-20 and 21 record over FC Dallas. And really, they have had a good record against FC Dallas. Dallas has had problems facing against the Quakes. Only one win in the last 11 against the Quakes, and that one win did came last year when the Quakes lost to them on the road. But again, playing on the road that against the Quakes, it's been kind of a graveyard for them. They have not been able to have a lot of success. But I think what's also interesting about this game is that this is the Luchi Gonzalez derby. So this is the first time that Luchi Gonzalez gets to face against his former team. And you know that, deep in Luchi Gonzalez' mind, he's definitely he still have his hearts with FC Dallas. He was a big part of that team, especially in the academy level. But deep down he also wants to beat his former team too. And there could be a good chance that he could do so because, again, this team, it's weird. The fact that this is a team that's very similar to NYCFC. When they're playing at home, they're basically untouchable. But when they are on the road, I mean, on the road, they're still kind of playing well, but they just kind of struggle in terms of closing out games. Like, imagine if this team could actually close out games on the road. They would definitely have a better record than they currently have. Not that, of course, so far it's actually been a decent season, and they've definitely exceeded expectation of what I thought this team could be heading into this year. But yeah, this is another good chance for them to get a win against FC Dallas. Though again, another thing I will also mention is that despite the fact that the Quakes have not lost to Dallas very often, they've also not won against FC Dallas. They actually have drawn a lot of games against FC Dallas in the last 7 meetings, and they're trying not to do so. Though again, I'm attending this one, and whenever I attend Quakes game, it's usually not good. Not a good thing because they tend to always lose. I think there was at one point that was kind of the case. Like for the whole season, I think I watched them play 7 times, and I've only seen them won once. So apologies to Quakes fans in advance that I'm attending this one, and most likely they're not going to get the win. But I said that on the home opener against Vancouver, and they were able to come back from that. So who knows? Maybe they'll continue that good home form that they've been having so far this season. But moving on, we got the Seattle Sounders versus the New York Red Bulls. So speaking of a team that desperately needs a win, Seattle is kind of that team, and it's not often you say Seattle is a team that desperately need a win, especially at home, because these last two home game at Lumen Field, it's been a problem. They've lost back-to-back games, something that is very on Sounders from them for the past couple of years. Now they play against a Red Bulls team that has a 3-7-4 record, but don't be fooled the fact that this is a Red Bull team that looks like have been rejuvenated thanks to Troy Lesnick's coaching here. And again, it's going to be interesting to see that even when I roll in the key points, who this boost that they have under Troy Leston is would continue in this one. Now for Seattle, again, they desperately need a win, only winning one in the last 6 games. And in terms of the all-time meeting, 6-3-5 in favor of the Seattle Sounders, and we'll see whether or not if the Sounders can do so because again, this is definitely not the way that the Sounders thought their season would go with this team. That there was a lot of consideration that they were gonna be challenging for supporter shield, or at least in the early part, it looked like it was the case. But they have definitely run through a bit of a rough patch, and again, some of that has to do with injuries. Losing Christian Rodon has been a key part, and we don't know whether if he is going to be back in this game too. But yeah, it's been a rough patch of form that the Sounders have been going, and we'll see whether or not if they can turn it around against a Red Bulls team that. I mean, there's a good chance I think the Sounders could win this one because again, for the Red Bulls, just like Cincinnati, fitness is going to be a concern coming into this one. I mean, playing 120 minutes and losing out of that one and have to go all the way across the other side of the country on a short week like this, it's not going to be easy for the Red Bulls to get a win out of this. But now moving on, we now talk about the Sunday games, and the first Sunday game is the day game between Sporting KC versus the Portland Timbers that will start at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, as this game is going to be on Big Fox. Now for Sporting KC, yeah, the last game was a huge reality check against St. Louis. I mean, after they have been having a relatively good form after the disastrous first 10 game of the season. They're now back to reality with them being at 2-4-8. Well, the Timbers 4-4-6, and they also started to kind of struggle in the last 2 games. And that Cascadia win that they had, and they've been on an incredible kind of form. It started to kind of rub off a little bit because the Timbers they've been having problems in terms of goal scoring in the last couple of games. Though all-time meeting 9-8-8 in favor of the Timbers, and again for Sporting KC, the key points coming into this one they're hoping last week is not a sign of regression back to where they were in the first 10 game of the season, where they was just an absolute disastrous class. Whereas the Timbers, again, can they finally snap out of this mini goal drought? They have not won. Well, yeah, they haven't won a game in the last 2 games, but they have not scored a goal in the last 2 games, and this is even when they have some of their best attacker too, like Evander on the pitch. I mean, that's got to be concerning when you have all your good attacking pieces in this team and yet they're starting to struggle to score goals a game. So we'll see whether they can fix that against a Sporting KC side that they want to get themselves back on track. Know if things are going to start to go wobbly again, that the Peter Vermees out crowd is going to be out again. I mean it kind of took a pause a little bit after they won a couple of games, but I'm pretty sure it may be back if things start to go bad again for the Sporting KC side. Then finally, we get Nashville versus Columbus Crew to finish off the week, as this game is going to be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and this is also on the Fox Network, but on FS1. Nashville 7-4-3, while Columbus 5-3-5. All-time meeting 2-2-1 in favor of the Columbus Crew, but obviously Nashville will be the favorites coming into this one because they've been red hot, one of the hottest team in the league with a 6-game unbeaten run, winning 4 out of their last 6 games. And unlike last season, where Geodis Park was a huge problem for this Nashville team, this season has been the complete opposite. Geodis Park has been an absolute fortress. Nashville has pretty much won almost every single game in front of their home fans. Whereas Columbus, it's the opposite. I mean, Columbus, they have been struggling on the road, and they also have been struggling lately too. Only one win in the last 6 game, and well, that game against FC Cincinnati was probably the best that they've played so far on the road this season. That came with a loss too. Now the thing about Columbus is that they're also playing off of a short week, but their 2 key attacker in Lucas Zarian and Cucho Hernandez didn't play in that game against Pittsburgh. So they're going to have some of their key starters in this one too. But again, knowing the fact that the Crew has really struggled on the road, and Nashville has been very good at home. I mean, when you combine both of that, it shouldn't be a very big surprise that most likely this game is going to go in favor of the home team. But you never know. Crazy thing has happened in MLS. Maybe Columbus would get a surprising win. I mean, we have seen some surprising resources, some resort that, I'm pretty sure have left a lot of people, including myself, said, I definitely did not see this coming. But I think when you look at how this game plays out, just by the recent form that both of these teams, it seems like Nashville might have got this, and this might be another win for this Nashville team. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of me previewing all 14 of these games. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this preview, and also let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 14 of these games that's going to be coming in match week number 15. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.